All right, folks. It is time once again for yet another episode of Fresh Juice, an indie game podcast. I am one of your hosts, Tommy Fresh, and joined, as always, on the other side is...
Matty Juice. What's going on, everybody? Glad to be here for another ep. We are approaching double-digit episodes, Tommy. So, pretty impressive. I don't think there's a lot of podcasts out there that have hit the double-digit mark. So I think we're establishing ourselves as one of the best.
Yeah, I bring up the stat all the time about, like, if you're consistently making a podcast, you are making more podcasts than like 99% of all podcasts ever created. So we're doing it, man. We're the 1%. So
and Lord knows we've started plenty and not gotten to 10 episodes.
yes. It took us to get into a groove, I think, to kind of get there. But hey, listen, this is climbing up to almost 10. My other podcast, I just recorded episode 120 and 121 yesterday. Ooh, double episode yesterday. It was fun. But I tell you what is also fun, catching up with my cousin Matt. How you doing, buddy? Yeah. What's new? How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, man, it was great. Yeah, I had the whole week off from work. I took a few extra days off. So, it was really relaxing. I got... played plenty of games, which was cool. Thanksgiving was awesome. Great food. We had my in-laws over for Thanksgiving, so that was nice. And and then just a good weekend of football. So that was great, specifically with the Eagles, obviously. But yeah, no, it was like exactly what I needed for like the week off. Sometimes, you take time off of work and it ends up things pop up and you don't really feel like you got any time off of work, really.
Mm-hmm.
So the last week was definitely like exactly what I needed with that. And then only a few more weeks to go until another break around, Christmas and New Year's. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, how was yours, Tommy?
Mine was good. It was, I always find these holidays to be a little bit stressful, but that's just me. But I did enjoy the Packers winning, which is a huge win. It kept us in the race. We're in the hunt for a playoff spot. We just got to beat the Chiefs. If we can beat the Chiefs, folks, listen, we're off to the races. We can finish out the year pretty strong. So we'll see. We'll see. But it was fun. It was a pretty low key week for me as well. Got to catch up on some stuff and get some stuff together for some other podcast stuff and just life stuff as well. But I'm happy to be back into a normal swing of things this week. Although it was going to be normal until today, my car started acting up. So tomorrow I got to bring it to the shop for the whole day. So that's kind of my day's shop. So
yeah, bummer.
What can you do? I'm just gonna junk it or something like that. And what they dust it. That's what they say in some online competitive games. Where you can dust things that you don't need anymore, and you get dust.
Just like Hearthstone.
I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah, dust it, man. Just dust it. Yeah, exactly.
But I'm glad that you had a good week. Obviously, we saw each other. We played a family football game. That was fun. Amazingly, my knee hurt up until the game. Then we played the game, and my knee doesn't hurt anymore. So I don't know how that works. Because I was like stressed out. I was like, it's gonna hurt more. I'm gonna like not be able to walk for a couple months or whatever. And now I'm right as rain. I don't understand.
That's the magic of the family football game. It just things tweak in the right places, not the wrong places.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
But we got a great show for you all today. We're going to hit a little bit of news, but then we're going to review a very interesting game called Checkmate Showdown, which is, we'll get into it, but it's basically taking chess and a fighting game and making it one game. And it is very interesting, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts and I guess hear my own as well, which should be interesting. So, do you want to catch us up on some news here, Matt?
Yeah, so a pretty light week in terms of news. There was a news article about Dave the Diver again, but I figured I would not throw that in here just because it's just repeating kind of the same stuff we talked about last episode. But this article in particular was very interesting. So this MMO RPG named Ethereal Echoes of Yore, they actually suffered a ransomware attack that affected all 17,000 player accounts that they had. Everyone lost all their items, all their progression, everything. And so these hackers demanded like a Bitcoin ransom in order to, like, decrypt kind of the hack that they, I guess, had put on to their servers. And obviously, like in most cases, those kind of hey, pay us and we'll decrypt it sort of things. They never decrypt it.
No.
They just get their payment and they just leave because it's all pretty much anonymous. Especially if they're asking for Bitcoin, that's like very hard to track, or impossible to track, I guess. So the game is still in early access, which is kind of the good news because if this were to happen with like a AAA game or something that was already out, obviously I think the outrage would be a lot more. And kind of a lot louder. But the devs have said that they're going to, once they get new servers, they're going to be restoring everyone's items eventually. Obviously, this could take a little bit of time, but still a really crazy story and definitely something that you need to keep your eye out for any of the games that you like to play or the listeners like to play, where this could happen, I guess, at any moment. And this is 17,000 player accounts. So it's not like it's a massive game like World of Warcraft or something like that, but still, that's a lot of people, especially for an indie game. And yeah, just a pretty wild story. What do you think about it, Tom?
Yeah, it's terrifying, right? And I'll talk about like a game that I'm going to recommend in the rec room, but like it has like kind of, I guess in a way, MMO-y things going on. It's a mobile game, but and I put a lot of time into it already. Like, I haven't been playing it a very long time, but I'm putting a lot of time and energy. And if I lost all my progress, I would be devastated. Now, I think that being said, the developers, I'm sure, are just as devastated. And I don't know. I would feel so deflated, right? And I guess it is good that it was in early access, but like 17,000 player accounts, you wonder how much time each, like, or an average time per player account they put into the game already, even though it is early access. And you got to worry, right? I would say probably more than 50% of those players do not return to the game, like when things kind of equal out, right? Because
Yep.
I know what it's like to lose progress on stuff. Like even in like a normal video game, if like you didn't reach a really hard checkpoint and you did so much and you die and you had to go back like so far, or if you like, I remember even back in the day playing Pokemon and like something like my Game Boy would act up and I would lose all the progress. Like you just grinded a bunch of stuff before saving the game. You're just like, do I want to do that again? And I can imagine a lot of these players feel that way. So I feel for the developers because that's terrifying, because 17,000 off the bat is a great start, right, for a game. Losing half of that is going to be so brutal, but I hope for their sake it does it. Maybe we'll review the game when it comes out of early access.
Yeah, no, it could obviously, yeah, definitely be a game that we play. And really, the crazy part about it, and you're mentioning, people not coming back to the game, is that the devs, it's required now to create a new account in order to play the game. So it's not even like they're going to be able to restore your account at any point.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have to somehow, create a new account and then somehow let them know that that account is associated with your old account, and then that's how they're going to give you all these items. Like, I'm not even too sure, but yeah, and it also, like, MMORPGs come out like all the time, I feel like, and a lot of them are letdowns, I would say, but getting 17,000 players in early access for an MMORPG is definitely great. It's unfortunate that this happened. And unfortunately, I think the fact that there were 17,000 people playing this is probably the reason it was targeted. early access indie game, maybe doesn't have the best security measures. Kind of an easy target there. So yeah, I mean, hopefully no one's like payment information or anything like that was taken. It doesn't seem like it based on the article, but still, you hate to see it. But hopefully they can, rise from the ashes, and once they publish their game fully, all this sort of stuff is behind them. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I'll start playing in early access. Maybe I feel bad, right? Like, and if they had 17,000 players, it must have had something going for it. So hopefully they bounce back from this. But yeah, really unfortunate. Hey, hackers, don't do that. All right, that's not like really cool. But yeah, I tell you what is really cool though, Matt.
Tell me.
The main squeeze, our main review for the week, which is, as we mentioned at the top of the show, Checkmate Showdown. It is a game, fighting game / chess game from Mana Void Entertainment and Bad Res Games, are the developers, and then Mana Void Entertainment, Indie Asylum were the publishers. And it's $19.99. We got it for 15% off.
We did, yes. Yeah, I accidentally put in there that we received the keys from developers. We did not. We actually paid for this one. But yeah, we got a 15% off. Unfortunately, I think that discount is ending today because it's Cyber Monday. So by the time you guys hear this episode, it'll be a full $19.99. But still, we only, what do we save? Like $3, something like that. Nothing too crazy.
So it's a game, and I guess the elevator pitch here. There's not a lot more than this is chess, and it's a fighting game, right? So when I say fighting game, I don't mean like a brawler like Super Smash or anything like that. I'm saying strictly Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, anything like that, right? This is what you're getting, and it is it's a very interesting concept, and it plays with a lot of the expectations of both chess and fighting games, and somehow combines it to a pretty fun experience. But let's talk about the gameplay and like our thoughts. So
Yep.
I'll let you start, Matt.
Yeah. Like Tommy said, it's chess and it's a fighting game. It's very vanilla in kind of both of those aspects, I would say. Really, the thing right out of the gate for me that was kind of shocking in a way is that there is no tutorial or anything. You just kind of get thrown right into the game. And I understand, most people know how to play chess. So I wasn't really looking for a tutorial on that sort of part. But as far as all the other mechanics they introduced, like the fighting mechanics, like there's a tag assist mechanic where, if someone engages into a fight with you, you can choose to essentially have pieces that are nearby to your piece kind of assist in the fight. You can choose kind of like a tag assist. They'll pop in, they'll do a little bit of damage, and then they'll pop right back out. So like those sort of things, I just had to figure out by playing. Which was, I would appreciate, some sort of tutorial, especially like a $20 game that's basically just chess, where you could play chess, you could play it for free on the browser, right? You could play it chess anywhere. So really, I'm paying $20 for the fighting aspect of this game. And I just kind of felt like a tutorial would have been really helpful. And maybe it's something that they'll add in at some point. I know a lot of these indie games, adding the tutorial and kind of the onboarding sort of stuff is, it can kind of fall off the radar and not really be a high priority for them. So I would have really liked that. I actually did look up a YouTube video as well because I was just curious to see like what other people were kind of thinking. I just watched like one video, and that was the first comment the guy made. He's like, "Oh, no tutorial." So I know I'm kind of not alone with that. And then yeah, as far as the rest of the gameplay, the chess kind of portion of the game is very straightforward. The fighting aspect, I find like it's very simple. There's not a lot of like massive combos or anything. You're not going to be getting really the depth that like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter has. But there is like there's a little bit of depth there. You're not just like kind of just punching or just doing anything. There was a few different move sets. There's like a normal attack. You can grab and throw people. There's like an ultimate attack. If you initiate a fight with someone else, you get You get an ultimate attack right at the start of the fight, so it kind of gives you a little incentive to start fights, which is interesting. As far as like the pawns, so the pawns don't fight. You don't actually fight like in a fighting game with the pawns, but every other piece you do fight with, and each one kind of has their different abilities. Some are quicker, some are slower, some are beefier, whatever it might be. So it doesn't get too in depth there, but there is a little bit of variety with like the different, if you're playing as the rook or the queen. We just played before we recorded this, and clearly like the queen is one of the best pieces because I basically just spammed her for a while and it was able to like win. But both obviously both teams have a queen, so it's just a matter of like when you want to use her. So yeah, it's interesting to have like kind of the different pieces have a little bit different abilities. As far as like the matchmaking, there is online matchmaking, and then there is you can play against like a CPU. There's not a lot of people playing this game right now that I noticed. I checked on Steam charts, and like the all-time peak for players was like 82 players. So it was kind of hard for me to find online matches. I found, I think, one when I first started trying out the game. I found one online match. But after that, it was really hard for me to find it. So I just ended up playing against the CPU, which the CPU is still pretty good. You're not really going to get a lot of like really odd organic movements that you would normally get in like a fighting game online, but it still gives you enough to kind of enjoy yourself there. So yeah, and I'm just looking through, excuse me, all my notes right now. One thing that I noticed as well is that damage will persist throughout your fight. So if you're fighting, if you're fighting a rook, you defeat the rook, and then you go to fight the queen, you're going to have the same amount of health that you had at the end of that rook fight. So which is kind of interesting. There's no really like healing mechanic or anything like that. It's just kind of making sure that you're defending yourself enough so that you have enough health for the next fight if you have to do another one. So yeah, I have a few other notes, but before I kind of get into that, because it's kind of maybe later in the conversation, what did you think about the gameplay, Tom?
Yeah. So the gameplay alone is very smooth. I totally agree about the tutorial. I was like expecting something as soon as I booted it up and nothing happened. And I was like, okay, let me play this. And, I'm just playing regular chess, like trying to flexing the old muscle of playing chess. Haven't played chess in a long time. And I was a little bit confused because, like, at first I was like, well, why are my pawns just killing the other pawns and not fighting? Because I had watched a video for the like a trailer for the game, and I was like, there's fighting in this. When does it happen? Did I choose the wrong mode? And then once I got past the pawn part, I understood that the main pieces all fought, and the main pieces are for those of you who don't know chess: king, queen, bishop, rook, and knight. And they all both rooks play the same, or both sets of rooks play the same, both sets of knights play the same, so on and so forth. And it was challenging because you realize that you can't just be really good at chess, right?
Yeah.
The equalizer is being good at fighting games. Now, being good at chess helps you gain an edge in the fighting aspect. It doesn't completely, because you get those assists, right? That you said. So the assists happen, like, let's say I was going to take your rook, but that rook is also in a spot where the queen and a bishop can attack whatever ends up in that spot. So you get to choose between the queen and the bishop to be your assist. So it's a nice little edge that you can get in the game to have a little bit of an assist. Now, it doesn't make up for any inadequacies you have as a fighting game player. So you do have to be a good fighting game player. Like this is chess second for all intents and purposes here. Now, that being said, the one thing I would say is this has as much replayability as chess does to you, right? A lot of people play chess all the time, right? A lot of people never even want to touch it. So if you are someone who really likes chess, I would probably recommend checking this out, but you have to also be into fighting games, right? So it's a really interesting idea here, right? They're taking two genres or two basically kinds of games and bringing it together, and it is this weird combination. I think it narrows down. You got to find like the one kind of person who likes
Hmm.
chess and fighting games, which is tough. Although I will say, if you are into fighting games, I think you can play this and have a good time, because the chess aspect, you just learn it, and then it ends up not mattering as much, right? And the checkmate, you have to kill the king. You don't just get checkmate. You have to. There are some rules where if the king is in a spot where he can get hit, like if he's in check for a certain amount of time, I think a couple turns, it's an automatic lose or something like that. And yeah, it was
Yeah.
interesting, right? Like I was like, okay, this is really cool. Like I like fighting games enough, and I like chess enough that I can enjoy this a couple times. But you know, not a lot changes. There's not a lot of like upgrades. There's not I mean, I don't think there's any upgrades really. And you have a couple different modes, and it's kind of interesting, right? So on the main screen in the bottom corner, it says learn more about chess at chess.com, right? It's like, okay, yeah, get better at chess, loser. But there's nothing there for fighting games, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so it's very clearly a fighting game first that just happens to have this chess element. So if that's something you're interested, I would check it out. But yeah, that's where I'm at for the gameplay.
Yeah, I think you bring up good points, and yeah, I didn't even realize that they didn't kind of like promote anything for getting better at fighting games. Because I did see the chess.com thing. And that's a good point. And yeah, I think you like mentioned this, but I saw that if you have 20 consecutive turns pass without combat, there's something called the final showdown that kicks in, and you enter like a series of battles with all the remaining pieces, and that will quickly like decide who wins. So just making sure that you don't end up in like a stalemate or anything like that. So it's very like that kind of drives home that it's very much a fighting game first and a chess game second, because you can't just play chess and expect to win. Like it forces you to have fights at some point. So yeah, definitely really interesting kind of mix of genres, and that's what we keep seeing on the show too, right? Is that like developers are kind of starting to innovate now by mixing up genres, which is awesome because sometimes you get something that maybe doesn't work that great, but then sometimes you'll kind of get something like I would say like for this game, like there's definitely an audience for a game like this. Like you said, you have to kind of be into fighting games and chess at the same time. But I would say even just like a fighting game enthusiast would probably enjoy this game because you can always learn chess, right? Like chess is that kind of like evergreen game that like just has been around forever and it's just kind of timeless. So you can always kind of learn chess, but if you want to learn the specific mechanics of this fighting game, obviously you would have to play it because it is slightly different than like Street Fighter or like Killer Instinct or Mortal Kombat and things like that. Now, in terms of like the fighting mechanics, though, and I know we're still talking about gameplay, and I'm curious to kind of what you think, and I just added some of these questions here. Is adding fighting game mechanics to this game like enough to carry it past just being chess? Like what I'm kind of thinking, and you kind of mentioned like upgrades and things like that. Like, should these developers be leaning more into the non-traditional kind of chess mechanics like fighting? Should there be power ups? Should there be upgrades? Should there be obstacles that like knock over, that mess with the chessboard itself before you even get into fighting? Should something different happen based on the piece that you end up defeating, or maybe the piece that you're using to defeat? Like if you defeat a rook with like a bishop, does something different happen than if you defeated a knight with a rook or something like that? So yeah, I think that there is potential here, and especially for like the esports side of the game, right? Like, is there going to be like an esports side eventually? I'm not too sure. It's a little early to tell now, and the game is just too small right now, I think, player base wise. But I could see this potentially growing to have like an esports side, if the fighting game community can kind of buy into it. But yeah, I'm curious as far as like are the fighting mechanics enough to kind of carry the game? What do you think about that?
So I think it's worth noting that the fighting mechanics are very clean, as far as I can tell, right? I think this is a very well made fighting game, right? However, I know, and from what I've learned about fighting games is it doesn't it can't be just black and white, right? It can't just be two things fighting. It has to be something you care about, right? Like not to bring it back to my other podcast, but like Flesh and Blood is a trading card game where you have a hero, and a lot of people identify with the heroes that they build a deck with, right? And there's a lot of that in fighting games as well. Like I'm a Ryu main, I'm a Scorpion main or whatever, and this does not have that, right? It's very vanilla, and I wonder if the very clean and well made fighting game mechanics are enough to carry it, into a realm where people are going to want to keep playing it and get even better at it. Because I bring it up in the visual side, but like the knight that you're playing on the I guess instead of black and white in this, it's yellow and purple. The knight that you're playing on the yellow side or orange side or whatever is the exact same mechanics and moves and idea as the knight that is playing on the purple side. So there's no differentiating there, and I think that that's going to be a hindrance for the game going forward because people want variety. I mean, look at even Smash Brothers is a brawler, but like people want more and more characters and more mechanics, and that's just what people want. So it's going to be hard. You can't just carry it on just the face value alone. So
Yeah.
that's my take on it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and that kind of goes into like the potential that I think this game has, where it doesn't, let's say there were new characters, right? Like with the knights, let's say there were new characters that had different fighting moves, but they were still classified as a knight. So when you
Mm-hmm.
actually use them on the chessboard, they move the same as a knight. Like obviously, I don't think they can get like huge licensing deals like Fortnite has, or anything like that. But it could be cool to have like, yeah, maybe a really cool looking knight, that maybe you have to earn with like credits after playing a certain amount of games or winning a certain amount of games, and it looks awesome. And he has a few different moves when you're actually fighting, but then he still behaves like a knight on the chessboard. I think they could do that with every piece on the board, and then even potentially, getting those pawns involved maybe a little bit. Maybe there's a special pawn piece that actually fights, or
Yeah.
something like that, which would be really cool. He's like really short or whatever. I'm just, really fast, whatever he wants to be. But yeah, I think I know we're really talking a lot about the gameplay with this game, but that's because for this one, it's mostly gameplay,
Yeah,
right? Like
it's all it is.
yeah, it's like just purely gameplay. But I know, we need to tackle the story here, if there is a story. So,
Yeah,
Tom, let us know.
there's no story here, but and actually, I just wanted to touch on like what you were saying about like having some different options as each piece, right? I do think that's a great idea because that would take this game to the next level. Actually, I believe like if each, let's say the king is always the king, right? But you got five different options as queens. You got five different options as bishops. Yada yada yada. All of a sudden, the building your chessboard for a match is huge, right? Because there's differences in how these play. They'll all play similarly. I would like a guess. Like you can't
Yeah.
make like them too different because then it's like too hard to predict how it's going to play out. The balancing would be a nightmare. But I do think that you're onto something there. But you're also onto something by saying there's no story because there is none, right? This is just this is just chess and fighting. You can create a story in your head if you want. That king hates the other one. That's the story of chess, right? You just You're just trying to take over everyone. Did you catch up? Did you hit any any story that I missed?
No, no, yeah, definitely no story. I was thinking it would be cool to have a story mode to explain maybe why the pieces are fighting, and because when you kind of take chess and make it a fighting game, you're kind of personifying those pieces, right? So it's like there's got to be some sort of story of how why do they have legs, like what happened, even if it was really silly or really funny, whatever it is. I think that could be cool. Obviously, I think for an indie game to also add a story in here, that's probably a lot of extra work,
Mm-hmm.
voice acting maybe, and all that sort of stuff. But I think it has potential. Like this is one of those games where typically when a game doesn't have story, I'm like, okay, like I understand. It doesn't need a story. This one, I think it could be really cool if it had a story. Like I would actually like if it had a story. Um, but yeah, no story, no lore, nothing like that I found while I was playing.
Yeah, well, my favorite part of a lot of fighting games that I've played recently is always the arcade mode or story mode or whatever, and there's none of that.
Yeah,
Like, I always think of like Injustice. The first
yeah.
Injustice had a great arcade story mode, right? And then, well, actually, it had an arcade mode and a story mode, and like this doesn't have either, right? So there's no even like different styles of chessboards you gotta like fight through. So I think these are things that like we're looking at like a really great base of a game that really could be expanded on, right?
Yeah.
If and obviously it would take resources and time, and we understand that that's not always the case. But I mean, I don't know. I know some indie games. We know some indie games that we discovered at like PAX like 6 years ago that are still in development because they want it to be as perfect as it can be. Look at a U-bomb sorters, but yeah. But that's the story. But let's talk about the visuals. And I hinted at it initially, and my main problem with the visuals, and it's the only problem I really have, because I actually kind of like the vibe. It looks pretty cool, especially on the board. The board's just like a cool neon looking chessboard. I think, and the character design is really neat, kind of like that the knight kind of like teleports and stuff like that. Like they all have their own personality, which I really enjoy. But two things actually. One, I would have liked more boards, more customization, perhaps. I think that is something that, like, even just like the baseline, like, oh, here's a jungle board or something like that. I know it's been done a million times, but it's nice. That's why it's been done a million times, right?
Yeah.
And my biggest gripe though is so when the purple side and the orange side they fight, let's say your knight tries to take their knight, and then you go into a knight versus knight fight. I found it easy to like start looking at the wrong knight
Oh,
because
yes.
it's the exact same character design, just the color's different, and you would think that would be enough, but it's not. Like I think that they should have done a completely different character design for one of the sides, right? Like they could function totally the same in terms of mechanics, but it just should look different because I don't know. It was throwing me for a loop. So
Yeah.
that's just what I found. But other than that, I think it looks it's a nice looking game. Kind of like the graphics too, and the fighting. And
Yeah.
like it's very clear what you're doing if you're actually blocking or countering or anything like that, and in comboing, it looks clean and it feels very clean as well. But that was my biggest gripe, is like I keep looking at the wrong character.
Yeah. No, that also kept happening to me as well. Yeah, so maybe even if they just, I don't know, yeah, somehow just made the other side look a little bit different, or whatever it is. I also think that like orange and yellow and purple aren't like traditionally kind of those like good guys versus bad guys colors. Like usually it's like red or blue, or like maybe yellow and blue. So I think like I don't know, maybe like the orange and purple is just kind of throwing me off also a little bit, even though they are pretty different colors. Um, But yeah, I really did enjoy like the character design. It's kind of almost like futuristic looking sort of characters, which is interesting. You don't really get that vibe too much when you're looking at the chessboard, I would say. But then when you actually go into the fights, you get obviously a little bit more detail on those characters. They're not like insanely detailed, anything like that, but they don't really need to be because they're chess pieces that are, have legs and arms. And then also, I noticed like some of the animation, and I think this is intentional. I don't think it's more on the performance side, but some of it was like a little stop motiony.
Mm-hmm.
Like I kind of noticed when like the fights would start, or even just like during the fights, you kind of got that little stop motion vibe, which I thought was pretty cool. And I would almost want them to maybe lean into that a little bit more. It could be really interesting to just kind of see all the different animations they can come up with like stop motion. And then you bring up a great point about like the actual chess boards. So I was actually thinking about Hearthstone because they do a really great job with their boards for when you're obviously playing Hearthstone. But basically in each corner they have like they maybe have like a little waterfall and then there's a jungle, but you can also interact with it. So like while you're playing the card game, maybe you're waiting for the opponent to go. You can like click on the birds and they'll like fly away or like hit the drum over on like the top left side and like you can like play the drum a little, just like stupid little stuff like that that I think you could easily do in this game. Well, I guess I won't say easily because I'm not a developer, but I think you could do it in this game, especially when you're waiting for your opponent to go. You can just kind of dilly dally a little bit because I did find myself like, okay, I just made my move. Now I'm just going to kind of sit here and just see what the opponent does, and it could take them 30 seconds, it could take them 5 seconds, whatever it is. So it'd be nice to just kind of kill a little bit of time, especially in this day and age where I feel like everybody's got like fidget spinners and fidget cue. You just need a little something to do while you're waiting. But yeah, no, I think overall the art was pretty solid. It was interesting, which I thought was great. Like it's I guess it's very easy for me to think that like a chess game, it'll be kind of like boring looking in a way because it's just chess. So I think they did a good job kind of making it interesting with the vibrant colors and the different types of animation that they have. So yeah, I think overall, like I was pretty pleased with the art, and I would like to see them expand on it more. It's kind of the story of this game, right? It's like I want to see more. I want to see more courses or more chess boards. I want to see maybe even maybe this is getting into like kind of having different abilities for some of the different characters, but like maybe there's a different king. Like maybe the kings are different, and then that kind of influences what the rest of those boards look like. So like I'm the jungle king, so all my stuff looks jungle. You're the desert king, all your stuff looks whatever it is. It's all the same move sets and all that stuff, but something like that could be really cool, and it could tie into the courses and the chess boards as well, which would be awesome. So yeah, definitely potential there, but I did enjoy the art overall.
Yeah, yeah. The more I talk about this game, the more I realize that this is almost like, hey, this is a nice concept, and it's almost like they want to like sell it to something bigger, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, or, like it would be smart for them to do that because what they got at the core, this feels like the first run at it, except they really made it polished, and then they didn't add any of the fluff. Sometimes fluff is whatever; it doesn't do anything to a game. But this is a game that I think really needed it. So very interesting. And then I think sound and obviously the sound design was fine. It's like typical like whatever like fighting game sounds, slaps and punches. I actually one day I want to play a fighting game that has just like slapstick noises, like like old timey.
Yeah, like a Wilhelm scream.
Yeah,
Something like that.
that would be amazing, actually. So, if you're listening, and we know you are, please do that for us. But yeah, it though like I think the actual sound effects were pretty great, and my only issue with the sound is not a lot of variety in music. Right? It's the same thing, and it kind of this is all coming back to this idea that this is a very just basic game, right? It's like not a lot of bells and whistles. Sometimes you don't need a lot of bells and whistles. I mean, the amount of time I spent playing Line Rider on browser back in the day.
Oh my god!
Yeah, you like that
Great
throwback?
game.
It's so
Yeah.
good. I still watch TikToks of that game. Um, but yeah, I mean that's my only complaint. It certainly sounds great. I like the theme music and how it changes up a little bit for the game and but it's just if they want you to keep playing this, eventually it's going to feel a little bit monotonous. Like here in the year 2023, right? This isn't like you should have some variety in your music, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's where I'm at with the sound.
Yeah, definitely agree, and I think it ties in nicely with like if you had different boards, they could have different, a lot of different boards that have really strong themes. They could have different music that's involved with those as well. Different characters, have different music based maybe when they're fighting, whatever it is, different sound effects, all that sort of stuff. One thing I did like about the sound um, was basically when like you start a fight, it almost reminded me. It wasn't exactly like it, but it almost reminded me of like a Pokemon fight where it's just like,
Yeah.
like I'm just like, oh god, I'm going in, like so that was cool. Maybe like lean into that a little bit more and make it like a little bit more intense. So like, oh my god, I'm about to start this fight. But yeah, no, I think overall like the music was fine. It was kind of like since we weren't playing it for like 20, 30 hours or like as much as like people typically would like, I guess, play chess, they're maybe playing every day. So the sound never annoyed me, but I could definitely see that like if it's the similar kind of music every single time, you're going to kind of get sick of that at some point. So hopefully they make some updates, add a few new tracks in there. I know, we talked last episode about like how AI could potentially help. Maybe there's some great, maybe there's some great like composers out there that can work for cheap. But if you don't really have a lot of the money, AI is also an option to just add a little bit more variety in there. But yeah, I think overall the sound, it did its job, but it could obviously be improved. But I know when you talk about performance, and did you play this on? You played it on PC because it's only on PC, obviously. Did you have
Sure
any
did.
major issues?
No, nothing that I really noticed. I had some issues when we first started playing earlier with my audio interface, but I think that was it. So, actually, which makes me think that maybe I should make an apology to the Invincible because that might have been my own equipment that was kind of screwing me there. But sorry, but I don't think it affected the game too much. Yeah, no performance issues on my end. You?
Yeah, no, no, ran really well. Like I said, like the stop motion stuff, I think is intentional. So like I didn't, I wasn't kind of saying that was any performance issues. But I did play the PC, obviously the Steam version. That's the only version that's out. But I played it through my phone using the Steam Link app because of something that I'll mention in the rec room later that I picked up on sale that helps me play things on my phone. And that worked really well. That obviously has some more to do with like my internet and making sure that I can stream the game from my computer to my phone. But it ran really well. When you're playing a game like chess and kind of fighting, you don't really need it to be like super precise like an FPS or anything like that. So it ran super well even through the Steam Link. So if you're thinking about kind of relaxing on the couch or something and playing this sort of game to kill some time on your phone, it did work well through the Steam Link. So yeah, performance was good.
Cool, cool, cool. Now that brings us to the rating. Our ratings are as follows, as they have always been. Your highest rating is a certified fresh juice. After that, a steal. Then you got get on sale. Then you got the manager's special. And then finally, spoiled milk, which nobody wants at all. So, Maddie, my friend, what do
Yeah.
you give Checkmate Showdown?
Okay, so everything we've talked about, it seemed like there was a lot of good there, but I'm giving this a manager special. All right, and the main reason for that, it's not really because of like the core of the game is bad. It's just it's $20 for a chess game with some basic fighting elements in it. And so I'm kind of looking at this as like a fighting game, right? Because you can play chess for free really anywhere. And there's not a very large player base. Like I mentioned, it was like 82 players max. And I think for a lot of fighting games, people want to compete online. That's a huge part of it. You don't always want to be going up against these computers because they're going to kind of just give you those similar patterns and all that sort of stuff. You want variety when you're playing a fighting game. So I just think $20 is a lot for that. So I was kind of trying to think of like what a fair price would be. I was teetering between like getting like on sale and manager special here, but I just went with manager special because I think if you picked up this game for like $3, for $3 to $5, like it would be worth it. But I just feel like for me, there's just not enough there. But throughout this whole episode, we've given a ton of ideas, and I think this game has a ton of potential. So if they ever implement that sort of stuff, maybe we'll see an update to some of these scores because it really is close to on sale for me. And if they made a lot of these changes that we mentioned, it could even be a steal at some point, if it's still $20. So yeah, but I think at the current state of the game, for me, it's a manager special. But what are you thinking, Tom?
So this is going to be the first game that I have a sliding scale on
Okay.
on what you should do, like how you should view this game. I think if you are a fighting game fanatic who happens to be like, like knows chess enough, I would say this is a good on sale, right? Like a $10 game is like probably where I would like love to see it. If you're like me, a fair weather chess player, fair weather fighting game player, this is a manager special, right? This is there's not a lot there. It's challenging and it is fun. I think it is well done, but like all the reasons we said could be, it for fair weather players like myself and yourself, we need the fluff, right? To want
Yeah.
us to make like continue to play this. And, the arcade like playing against a computer can only be so much fun. I actually didn't have a ton of problems finding a match. I did both random match and ranked match, and I found them pretty quickly. But you can't like if that player base falls short, all of a sudden you're just stuck playing the computer, which isn't as fun. And then I will say this would be if I will almost say if you're a huge chess player and but don't play fighting games, this is a spoiled milk for you, because that is one thing that I found very frustrating as someone who knows chess enough, but like I still like fighting games, so like it wasn't that big of a deal. But like if you're just like a chess player and you're like, oh yeah, like my opponent sucks, like I'm like totally destroying them, and then they just kill your king because they were better at the fighting game, I would be so mad. So like if you do not go into this say, oh yeah, I'm like a grandmaster at chess. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. So,
Yeah.
but for me, it is a manager special, and I think maybe it should be a mobile game, right? I
Ooh, yeah.
I think that would be a way better place for this game to live. But I think a valiant effort and certainly a really great starting point here, and I would love to see them expand on it or even like take it to a bigger studio, because I think what they have like makes a lot of sense, right? And say, hey, listen, this is all we could do. We need the rest. So,
Yeah. It's super like interesting with this game because I feel like we're given these like lower kind of scores, but we also see the potential in the game, and like it just there's so much hope kind of around a lot of the mechanics and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's just a really kind of interesting. We haven't had a review like this, at least from my end,
mhm.
where I've like felt like this about a game, but I still am not like recommending it to people. So yeah, I think that's a great point also about like if you're a gung ho chess player, this game is blending genres, but the genres are still pretty separate in terms of like if you want to win, you need to be good at kind of both of those things. It's not just it's not like Leica. It's blending the Metroidvania and like a like kind of Trials like motorbike sort of game, but you don't necessarily need to be really good at like a Metroidvania or a motorbike game to like be good at that game. You can like understand that game kind of separately. This one is like they're not super blended these genres together, but so if you're not good at one of them, not good at fighting or chess, you're gonna definitely feel that when you're playing the game. So yeah, no, I think I'm glad we were on the same page. I wasn't sure how you were feeling about it because of everything that we just said, right? It just like,
Yeah.
it just I wasn't 100% sure, but it's good to know we're on, similar wavelength
Well,
there.
I love talking about games like this because there's so much to talk about, right?
Yeah.
And I as we talk to each other, I'm coming up with more ideas about what this game is, and I'm just realizing this. I was like, why? What does this feel like? It feels like you bought a fighting game and then you played it, and then you went into the side menu and were like, oh, they got mini games too. Oh, there's a chess game, and then that's
Yeah.
what this is. It's a mini game in a better fighting game.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. It's very interesting. So. We do have some listener questions, folks. First one coming from Kmore,
Yes, from Kmore.
which is why is an indie game like Lethal Company outselling COD on Steam? COD, for those of you who don't know, is a fish. It's also Call of Duty.
Yes. For those who don't know, like Lethal Company is this like newer game that has come out that is I think it's on sale right now for like $8. And it's a kind of like a co-op survival game, almost like Among Us-y sort of in a way. The clips are really funny with the game. It's like one person's kind of controlling, at least from the clips I've seen, one person is like kind of controlling, doors opening up. So like I saw this clip of just like, you're looking at a screen, your friend is telling you to like open D4. The D4 opens up, they walk in there, and then he's like, close D4, close D4, because like there's like a creature in there or something. So you got to close it, and then like you close it, and he's like, oh, okay, all right, we're good. And then he's like, open D4, because there's something else in the room that he was like just in. So it seems like really funny and definitely like a streamer friendly kind of game, I would say. Kmore's asking, why is an indie game like Lethal Company outselling Call of Duty, specifically the newest Call of Duty, on Steam? And I think one big reason is price point, right? So like a game that's like, Call of Duty is like notoriously expensive and rarely ever really goes on any good sales. So being able to, especially since this is kind of like a party game in a way, right, where you're going to play with friends. If I pick this up, chances are I could easily get like 4 or 5 of my friends to also pick it up for $8, and then we could, all play it together. For Call of Duty, I could maybe get one of my friends to pick up Call of Duty, and then even then it's going to be a really hard sell because it's like 60 or $70, and how much of it are we actually going to play? So I think that's a big reason. It's just the price point and just the ease of getting into the game. And I also just think, with this game kind of being like a streamer friendly game, and I've seen it like all over TikTok. You don't really see that with Call of Duty too much these days because there's like a million of them. So people don't really care to like share these new clips. But I've seen like so many people talking about Lethal Company, so many people being like, what is this game? It looks really interesting. And I think this is almost like a bigger question too, is like why do indie games outsell AAA games, as often as they do? I would say it's like decently often. That we're talking about this indie game that has really blown up and sold a bunch of I don't know, 5 million copies or whatever it might be. I think a big reason for Lethal Company, a big two reasons are price point as well as just being essentially a memeable game where you're able to easily be shared, and so many people are finding out about it. So I think those are the two big reasons. But curious to know what you think, Tom.
Yeah, you kind of. I mean, when you said $8, like as soon as you said it was $8, I was like, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, price point is huge, and then Call of Duty, it's the same shit every single time. I mean, like I haven't played ones in 10 years, so obviously I know they've done newer stuff with it, but it's just who cares, right? Like, and like the bigger studios, they keep doing the same thing over and over again because it's a safe bet, right? Oh, it's gonna make a ton of money. Why not? Like, look at Madden, right? Madden, it's not, that game's not changing. Football's not changing. Some rules change, but football's not changing. It's just gonna be updated graphic and updated players, right?
Yeah. Well, they're going to add a fighting game mechanic actually to the new Madden. So whenever you tackle someone, it goes into fighting mode.
I mean, hey, listen, I'm down to bring back some NFL Blitz too. I mean, that'd be a
Oh
lot of fun.
yeah. Oh man.
But you know, it's just it's kind of like movies. Like people get fatigued on different things. Like you're seeing it with superhero movies, right? Nobody cares, right? I like it used to be such an event that a superhero movie came out. Now, like yeah, like the people who are really into it are going to talk about it, and it's kind of like a return to form. And I think that's what we're seeing here with like this example of Lethal Company, which I had actually not heard of until right now. So I'm gonna have to check that out as soon as we're done this podcast because it does sound fun. And yeah, and being fun to play with friends at $8, it's like it's a no brainer. And I think like yeah, and if you look at it from a larger scheme too, I think the push of AAA games to the $70 price point, it definitely has hurt. In the past couple of years because there's only so many games you can buy for that because people are starting to realize that I'm not getting a lot. Like I'm playing this game a couple times, putting it down. I wasted $70, right?
Yeah.
So that would be it. But it's a great question, K Moore. Next question comes from rcarp11, who I know pretty well. What do you think would cause an indie game to flop?
Good question. Another great one. So yeah, just without getting like too much into it, I actually think kind of all of the segments, or I guess like things that we cover in our review, right? Gameplay, story, visual, sound and music, performance. We had a question a few weeks ago about like which of those like rank them in order of like priority, right? Of just like what's most important to make a great indie game. Is like gameplay, story, visuals, music, performance. So gameplay is always number one. If your game isn't going to have great gameplay, it's going to flop. Like just hands down, if it doesn't have good replayability, if it's not interesting, it's going to flop. If it's trying to have a story, so that's the thing as well, is like if it's trying to have these sort of things like story, like not every game, the one we just reviewed, it doesn't have a story. I'm not taking away points from it because it doesn't have a story. But if you're a game that's trying to have a story and it just falls flat, it just is not interesting. It's something we've heard a million times. Similar maybe to like Cuisinart, right? Where like we've heard this story before. We've heard it in Moonlighter. We've heard it in I think Hades is similar to Cuisinart in a way. So like we've kind of heard those sort of stories before, so that kind of made it so that story fell flat. So I think yeah, there's like multiple issues or multiple things that can make an indie game cause an indie game to flop, but I think gameplay is number one. And then I would say performance is probably number two. If your game isn't going to run well, no one's going to play it, so that's really going to cause it to flop. But I think for things like story, visuals, and sound and music, they're not really going to cause the game to flop because there are also some things that, and at least in my opinion, that could be updated or changed eventually. Especially a lot of indie games that maybe come out in early access that try to address all those things. Maybe it's the visuals aren't great at the beginning, but they start to get better over time, or the sound and the music is really basic at first, but then it gets better over time. Maybe the story is not too interesting. God knows I've played plenty of early access games that they have very minimum story, but then by the time they come out, there's a whole campaign and a whole story. I know, Grounded is one of those. I don't know if I would consider that indie, but Grounded is one of those games where when I first played it, it barely had any story. And now when you play it, it has a full fledged story that's really interesting. So I think for me, like gameplay and performance, if those two things fail, that thing is a big flop. But what do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I, I think when you look at indie games in general, it's more flop than not, right? It's just the nature of it because like there's only so much quote unquote shelf space for these games, right? And the cream of the crop is always going to rise, right? I think that's just always going to like it it's so important to have everything firing on all cylinders with these games. Like Cocoon is a great example, right? that is, it had the visuals, it had the puzzle. It was accessible. It was on like different platforms is another huge thing, right? Like one of the biggest things, I know it's hard, right? And I understand that from talking to developers at like PAX and stuff like that. That like sometimes it's just going to take time to get something on the Switch, but sometimes you just gotta have it on the Switch, especially like off the bat, right? Because but not everybody has a good PC kind of setup or whatever. So and they want to play on Xbox or whatever. So it's tough, but yeah, that's pretty much it. But thank you for the questions, Kmore and our Carp 11. Have to
Yeah.
change that name soon. Um, let's get to the rec room where we recommend something that maybe is not an indie game. What do you have to recommend this week? You hinted at it. I think we both hinted at our rec room.
Yes. Yeah, I did give a little teaser earlier. So I was playing Checkmate Showdown, as I mentioned, through my Steam Link app on my phone, and I was able to control it by using a backbone, which I actually have right here. So if you're watching the YouTube stream or the
Ooh.
YouTube podcast, so this is essentially, I mean, like it's not anything groundbreaking. This backbone thing has been around for a while. There's other versions of it, but I know Backbone has been kind of one of the premier companies to create sort of this, basically turning your phone into like a switch in a way, right? Where you're putting your phone in between these two different kind of Joy-Con things, and then for me, this is really just um, a huge difference versus like using something like I have something where you can take like an Xbox controller and you put your phone kind of above it, so you're using like a legit controller. But I find it way easier, especially after getting so used to the Switch, to just have the controls on both sides of my phone. And the great thing about the Backbone as well, I got it for 30% off. Unfortunately, I think by the time this episode comes out, that sale's going to be gone. So it was like $70. It's normally $100. I've had my eye on it for a few years. They never had one for Android until like I think past like year or so, year or two. And I have an Android phone, so I picked it up. I was like, finally, I see it on sale. I want it, and I've been using it quite a bit. But really, the thing that I think sets this back, it's called Backbone, obviously, if you haven't picked that up. But the thing that kind of sets them apart is that they have an app, a Backbone app. So there's a button on the controller, there's like a big orange button right there that you can hit at any point, and it opens up. It kind of opens up the app as like an overlay, almost like the Xbox guide or like something you might use, like the PlayStation guide that kind of shows you your settings and all your games and all that stuff. So I was able to take a look at like all the games I already had on my phone show up right there. And then there's a huge library of games that are either on the Google Play Store or you can stream it through like the Xbox Cloud. So I actually played, what did I load up? I loaded up some game. I think it was Lies of P, which is like that Souls like that I've mentioned a few episodes ago. I played it like through the Xbox Cloud, and it worked pretty well. I was just sitting in bed on my phone playing like Lies of P. But mainly, I've been playing like Google Play games, Retro Bowl. I know we love Retro Bowl, so I've been playing a good amount of that. I even downloaded Madden, and I didn't even realize like Dead Cells is on the Google Play Store. I got that. Moonlighter's on the Google Play Store. I got that. And I actually was able to like subscribe. I did like 6 months. It's like $1 a month for the first 6 months of like the Google Play Pass. It's just like the Apple Arcade, but it's on the Google Store. So I've got that for 6 months. So I'm going to try out as many games as I can, and who knows, maybe another Rec Room will be some mobile game that I've discovered on the Google Play Store. But yeah, that's it for me. That's the Backbone is my recommendation. But speaking of mobile games, Tom, I think you might have something to bring up here,
I do. I
perhaps.
do. So well, first of all, that sounds really cool. And you said like it wasn't always for Android. Was it for iOS as well? Or
Yeah,
yeah.
so they first came out with like the iPhone version, and they only had that for a few years. And like Android, it just said coming soon, and I just sat and waited, and they finally did one with like USB-C. So yeah, definitely recommend it. It's awesome, and this thing will be coming with me to PAX or anywhere I'm going where I want to kill some time. It's pretty compact, so yeah, loving it.
Awesome. I'll have to take a look at that because that sounds like a lot of fun. Because I always look at like Dead Cells on like the Apple Store or the App Store, and I'm like, I don't really want to use the touch controls. It doesn't sound like fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll definitely be looking at that. Speaking of mobile games, I'm recommending a game called Knighthood. I
Nice.
picked it up, and I think it's made by the people who made Candy Crush, but it's like an RPG. So you have this like character, your knight or whatever, and you gotta like go through, and you have like stamina, so you can only play so much throughout the game. It's like your typical like almost like, what the hell is that stupid game that every streamer gets sponsored by?
Oh,
um
Raid Shadow Legends.
Raid Shadow Legends, which I once
Yeah.
tried and I didn't get into, and then I started playing this one, and I was like, actually, this one actually is way designed way better, and seems like does not feel like pay to win or anything like that.
Hmm.
Certainly, you can only play so much, and you do have to grind. So if you like something to kind of like actively grind, like think about like how you're grinding in like a
Yeah.
game and not just like wasting away your time, I would say it's a pretty fun game. I've been enjoying the hell out of it. And it has like events that you could do to get like cool gear and stuff like that. And like you get heroes. Like in each battle, you bring two heroes, and they all have different, I guess, affinities or whatever. They're good against certain kinds of enemies, and then you got to think about
Hmm.
that. And then like sometimes you just go into an encounter and you get bonus rewards if you just do the objectives that they want you to do, rather than picking the best weapon and the best heroes for the match. They say, oh no, you got to pick this kind of hero, this kind of weapon. You got to do this during the battle, and you'll get like a bunch of extra, shit. So like, it's fun, it's active, and I think it's like, a pretty fun thing. And they have guilds and some PvP stuff. So I've been enjoying it. Like I just been looking for like a mobile game that like I don't just beat and then never play again. I kind of want
Yeah.
something like I could actually feel like I'm progressing through something. So I've enjoyed it. I don't know. It's like weird. I never thought I would be into it, but I am. So that's Knighthood,
Now,
folks.
big question though: have you put any money into the game yet?
No, I have not.
Oh,
Not
wow.
yet.
And how long have you been playing it?
A week.
Oh, okay, okay, a week.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
So
It
gonna
hasn't
be
been a
like
long time.
6 months, you know?
No, no, no.
I
Because
was like, that's amazing.
like I have not. The only time I feel like I'm going to, I will say this. So at the beginning of an event, it usually runs for like a month or so, right? And you accrue like event points by doing certain quests or doing like an event like an event thing, whatever. I don't know what they're
Hmm.
called, but and as you get more quest like event points, you unlock more stuff, and then of course they have like the battle pass side, right, where you get extra stuff. So here's the free side, and then here's the pay side.
Yep.
It's $5. I almost did it for the event that I kind of came into, but that event just ended, and I went to Reddit. I was like, is it worth doing the event? Is it worth paying for it? And they're like, well, maybe at the beginning, because it also helps you get double XP and stuff like that. So I might, if I'm still playing when the next event starts, I might throw $5 in just for that. But I haven't like paid for anything like, more currency or gems or anything like that, or stamina. Like,
Gotcha.
it's I'm still free to play currently,
Nice.
but
Yeah. And I also, just a recommendation too, because this is something I've done, is like, I know you're on iPhone, but there's an app, Google Opinion Rewards. And also there's another app called Attapol, ATTA poll. And you can like fill out those surveys. I think we actually might have talked about it already at some point. But I've used it like for Google Opinion Rewards. I've just, you answer a few surveys every now and then. And I've used it as Google Play credit to like, I think I bought Retro Bowl with it, like the pro version. And it was basically free. All I had to do was answer a few surveys for like a month or whatever, and then I earned enough to actually purchase that. So it's probably a rabbit hole you're going to end up going down if you get too much into the surveys, and then all of a sudden all the money that you're putting into the game is from the surveys, and all of a sudden you've spent hundreds of dollars or whatever into the game. I know that can happen with mobile games, but just a tip for anyone out there that, doesn't like any of these predatory practices that these mobile games have, you can combat them by filling out surveys and selling your data, and then
Yeah.
and then you pay for the stuff in the mobile games. That'll teach them.
I mean, yeah, I did actually do the poll thing. We didn't talk about it on the show, but we talked about it at a trip that we were on. I forget which one, but hey, this has been a great episode. I think an all-timer, right?
Yeah.
We're hitting all-timers at this point in our career, right?
Top 9, I'd say.
I would say top 9 for sure. It's probably going to make the top 10 too, if I had to guess. But please plug everything you need to plug, Matthew.
Yeah, if you guys want to follow me outside of the podcast, at Matty Gorm, Gorm, on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, all that sort of stuff. I have been streaming over on Twitch more recently as well, but been playing some Return to Moria. So follow me over on twitch.tv/Matty Gorm. We've had a good number of people popping in as well, so it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, you can follow me over there. And yeah, Tommy, you want to plug yours, and then we'll talk about how people can follow the show.
Yeah, continue to find me on Twitter at FreshBudsPod, where is the home for my Flesh and Blood trading card game podcast called Fresh and Buds. It's a good time over there if you ever want to check out the game, or if you just want to, learn about it. You can just DM me if you want, if that's something you want to learn about, and I will point you in the right places. I got friends all over that community. Yeah, other than that, hey, check out Fresh Juice on all platforms, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all at Fresh Juice Pod. It's a great way to support the show. We're doing this for no money. And the best way you can support us is by loving us. And we know that you all do. And we love our juice heads. You guys are the coolest. But did I forget anything?
No, just stay juiced.